Have you ever had one of those sessions where things are going well, you're starting to build a stack when, wham, you lose a massive pot that brings you back down to even? And so you rebuy and start to rebuild when, bam, your 2-pair loses to a set? I was in the middle of one of these sessions the other day when I decided, no, I'm not going to take it anymore. Screw strategy, I'm going to will myself to a win. Miss the flop? Time for a check raise. Miss the entire board? Fuck it, I'm all in.
There's no strategy. I have no strategy.
Hand after hand, I battled. And you know what? It worked. Well, kind of. It starts off like a typical session. I buy in for 300 and take a seat at a 1-2 table. I fold for a while before this hand when I look down at ace-jack suited in the small blind. There's one limper before the button decides to raise to 7. This guy was a pretty loose player. I think his pre-flop decision tree looks something like this. So I'm gonna bump it up for value here. I make it 30 to go. The limper folds, but the button makes the call, so we're going heads up to a flop that comes 5, 6, 7 rainbow. Sweet mother of God, I can't imagine a worse flop than that. I check it over to the button, who bets $20. With 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw, I decide to peel one here and see what develops on the turn. The answer? Not a damn thing. It's an offsuit queen, and when I check and my opponent bets 75, I quickly pass my cards to the dealer. One orbit passes before this hand where I look down at ace-9 in the big blind. There's another late position limper before our incredibly loose friend decides to raise to 7 once more. My hand is doing well versus his range, but it's not going to function very well multi-way, so I 3-bet to 25 to isolate. As expected, the limper folds and the small blind makes the call, so heads up once more and off to a flop that comes a little bit better this time. It's king 9-5 with 2 diamonds. Definitely a good flop and one I want to c-bet, but looks like I won't get the opportunity to when the small blind leads for 25. Interesting spot, definitely think a raise is very viable here. This player could be leading out with hands like 7-8, Jack-10, Queen-Jack, hands that I'm ahead of and definitely want protection against. But I'm also a little bit worried I might get 3-bet on the flop by a hand like Queen-Jack of diamonds or 6-7 of diamonds or any diamond combo really. So I decide to call here and see what develops on the turn, though I think a raise here might be fine. So off to the turn, and boy am I glad I just called, as it is more destructive than Yoko Ono sitting in on a band practice. It's the queen of diamonds bringing in the flush, bringing in some straight combos, even some of his gut shots now have second pair. So when my opponent bets out $100, I make the tilting but easy fold. This hasn't been a great start to the session, but it looks like I'm going to get an opportunity to turn things around when I look down at ace-king in the hijack. There's 4 limps to me, and I decide to raise to 20. The button, big blind, and one of the limpers make the call, and we're going 4 ways to a flop. The dealer delivers ace-jack-8 with 2 spades. I've got top pair, top kicker, and a pretty sizable pot. Action checks to me, and I'm looking to pump some money in, so I make it 50 to go. The button makes the call while the other 2 players fold, so heads up and off to a turn that comes a little bit concerning. It's the 6 of spades. A little bit of background on my opponent in this hand. I had seen this particular player do a lot of betting and show a lot of aggression in weird spots. He had turned bottom pair into a bluff, had turned middle pair into a weird value bluff, just way too many bets in all sorts of different configurations. With that in mind, I decide to check here and give him the opportunity to make one of those mistakes again. He carves out a bet of 100, and given my read and the fact that I'm getting almost 3 to 1, I decide to make the call and also decide that I'm probably going to be calling a lot of different rivers. The dealer peels an offsuit 5 on the river, and I put my plan into motion and check. Just as I had anticipated, my opponent carves out another bet, this time for 200. Okay, I know I said I was gonna call, but fuck, I wanna fold. Against basically everyone at these stakes, I would happily have these cards sailing into the muck. But against this particular guy, I think this spot is actually close, especially when I have the king of spades or ace of spades in my hand. So after about a minute of deliberation, I flick in the chips and my opponent instantly flips over queen 10 of spades. Okay, look, I was wrong, it happens, but you know, it's no big deal. I'm not gonna tilt, it's fine. No, Look, I've even got aces. That's a hard hand to screw up. I raise to 10 and everybody folds.
Warning. The following hands contain questionable decisions and bizarre play. Viewer discretion is advised.
Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. I didn't actually go on tilt, at least not in the conventional sense. But that doesn't mean tilt doesn't show up in more subtle ways. Like this hand where I've got Queen Jack in middle position. The loose player on my right limps and I raise to 15. The button and the limper both make the call, so 3 ways and off to a flop that comes deuce, 5, 6, rainbow. Nice, let's go, woo! The limper checks and I check as well before the button decides to bet 25. The limper makes the call and now it's back to me. In this specific spot with my backdoor equity against a couple of wide ranges, my main strategic consideration is fuck these guys, I hate this fucking game, I raise to 100. And somehow the button and limper both instantly fold. Okay, nice. Maybe this is gonna work after all. A long while passes before this hand where I look down at Jack 10 of hearts in early position. There's an under the gun limp and I raise to 12. The cutoff, button, and limper all make the call, so 4-handed and off to a flop that comes 9, 7, 3, rainbow. The limper checks to me, and generally speaking in these multi-way configurations, we're not going to play many bluffs. But I'm kind of still in fuck the world mode, and if we're going to have any bluffs at all, Jack 10 with a gutter and 2 overs is probably one of the better candidates, so I go ahead and continue for 25. The cutoff makes the call while the button and limper both fold, so just one player left and heading to a turn looking for a little bit of help. The turn brings the deuce of diamonds, which obviously doesn't change anything, and I'm a little unsure how to proceed. I definitely could double barrel with this hand and try and represent 10s, jacks, queens, all the overpairs I have in my range, but I'm really not sure if this guy's the type to fold a 9. I don't really have a read on him at all. In situations where the decision is close, I like to see if there's any sort of live read I can utilize to point me in a specific direction. One of the easy ways to do that is to ask, "Can I see your chips real quick?" A lot of players will unintentionally reveal information about their hand in their reaction to this question. For example, when I posed the question to this player, he looked as though I had just asked if I could take his wife out to Olive Garden, which would legally bind her to me because, as you know, when you're here, you're family. That is to say, he was not pleased to hear this question, and that's enough information for me to go for it. So I fire 40 into about 100 here, planning to put him all in for his remaining 110 on the river. This sends my opponent into the tank. Another benefit of asking that question is it gets players thinking about future streets and potential future losses. If he makes the call here, he's probably going to feel obligated to call the river as well, so I've changed the decision from is your hand good enough for a call on the turn to is your hand good enough for a call on the turn and river, which for type players is a much higher bar to clear. So after about a minute of deliberation, we get the dejected looking fold and take down another pot with garbage cards. Let's go! I'm definitely taking a very exploitative style, not playing GTO, thinking outside the box, but if these hands were outside the box, this next hand sets the box on fucking fire. It starts when I look down at Ace-Jack in early position. I've moved to a 2-5 table and there's a $10 straddle, so I open to 40. The cutoff, straddle, and limper all make the call, so the 4 of us are off to the flop. If my dad were commentating this vlog, he might call the next flop, "My son will," as it's a complete disappointment. It comes 9-5-3 with 2 clubs. Action checks to me, and even though I'm tilting a little bit, I'm still not going to go for this one. I check. The cutoff quickly checks, so we're off to a turn, still 4-handed, which brings the 10 of clubs. Once again, everyone checks to the cutoff, and this time he bets 100. It folds to me, and this is a clear and obvious fold. I'm really not sure what I was thinking. I guess maybe I was hoping he had a hand like King Jack or King Queen with a club. I don't know. It's a very easy fold, but I end up making the call. Yikes. The river is an 8 of hearts, and I'm not sure if this is a good card. I'm not even really sure what I was hoping for on the river. Maybe an ace, but who knows. Here I check once more and pray he somehow just checks back. Obviously that doesn't happen when he announces all in. I'm not really sure how to explain this. I'm not really sure what I expect him to have or what I expect to be beating here, but I end up clicking call. My opponent shows ace 3 of clubs for the nut flush and I am sick. I dust off my entire stack and end my session with a huge punt. Just kidding. On the turn, I said this was a clear fold, but there was some key information that led me to make this call. First, look at the timing of this fold by the limper. The straddle folds instantly once the cutoff makes the bet, but the limper takes about 5 seconds to assess his hand. This indicates to me that he has some sort of connection with this board. That could be a 3, a 5, a single club, something of that variety. This may not seem significant, but all of these hands reduce the possible combinations of value hands the cutoff could have when he makes this bet. And what kind of value hands could he have anyways? He checked back the flop against 3 players, so I can't imagine him having a set. Even a hand like top pair feels like a stretch. The only value hands that make sense within this context are a flush and turn top pair like king 10. I think most of the flush draws probably bet on the flop, so I'm really only worried about a 10, which leads me to the single most important moment of this hand. Watch how much time passes between my check and the cutoff betting 100. It's incredibly quick. Imagine you're the cutoff here and you've got a hand like queen 10 or king 10. Wouldn't you take a moment to think about sizing? Instead, we get the Usain Bolt of bet timings, which to me indicates either a very strong hand or a very weak hand. So to recap everything, we've got an opponent with a highly polarized range, in a spot where he can't really have good hands, who I believe is capable of bluffing. With all that in mind, I decide to make the call. When the river brings the 8 of spades, nothing really changes. Sure, I'm now losing to queen jack, which is a straight, but I also block that hand. Fundamentally, he's still representing a very polar range with more bluffs than value. So when he goes all in, I take a few moments to review everything and make my decision, because calling all in with ace-high is not easy, but once I've gotten to this point, I really can't fold. All I need to do at this point is lock in my final answer and let the chips fall where they may.
He's won
$977.
$1.
My opponent shows ace of clubs, 7 of hearts, and I scoop my largest pot of the session with ace high. I'm pretty happy I was able to put all the pieces together on this hand and make that call. In the end, I was in for 1.1k and cashed out for 935 for a small loss of 165. So happy to battle back there, though this was a bit of a come down from my last session where money was falling from the fucking sky. Speaking of money falling from the sky, did you know you could earn up to 25% rake back on major sites like GG Poker, ACR, and Ignition? That's rake back on everything from poker to table games to sports betting. To get started, head to the link in my description and fill out this 2-minute form. Someone from Zapruder Affiliates, the organization I'm partnered with, will reach out to you and get you earning rakeback right away. Couple of quick announcements. I'm planning on playing the main event at Portland Meadows on August 26th. Let me know in the comments if you're going to be there, or if you see me at the room, come give me a shout out. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next video.